resolution.
Okay.
I think it's
So that's my
significant.
table here because we,
Huh?
that last phrase was.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
6D. Okay. No.
I got-
Yeah, that is. Okay.
Better.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll note that when I announce the consent agenda, just.
Like change to
Helps you after
the resolution.
conversation.
Mission to FHA. Okay.
Call him a couple of times.
Did you?
About 30 seconds to go.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Marcy. How are you doing?
When did the, I'll have to talk to you about the, sound barriers on
Yeah.
5 around Idlewild.
You know,
No, we don't. No. Everywhere right now.
You guys funded the jail, right?
yeah.
Okay.
There's.
Oh, I'll talk about it after.
That's what your county.
Good evening, everyone. I will call to order the FAMPO Policy Committee meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance if you are able.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball.
All right, Mr. Anderson, will you please call the roll?
Of course. Jason Graham,
Here.
Tim Baruti,
Here.
Matthew Kelly,
Here.
David Brown, Robert Schneider, Joe Stainsby,
Present online.
Marcy Parker,
Here.
Michelle Shropshire,
Here.
Lori Hayes,
Here.
Jacob Lane,
Here.
Chris Yakubowski, Deborah Frazier, Kevin Marshall, Tim McLaughlin, David Ross, Meg Bomke,
Here.
Monica Gary,
Here.
Crystal Vanich,
Here.
Thomas Cohen, Daryl English. That concludes roll call and we have quorum.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, I will ask for a motion for approval of the April 17th, 2023 Policy Committee agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are now at public involvement. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak?
Lost that drawing.
Raise my hand.
Oh, we'll do in person first and then we'll move to online. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fran Larkins, and I live in South Stafford, in the community of Celebrate. And I just really wish you all could go back to the drawing board. I know you put a lot of effort into trying to find another option or options other than just right at Celebrate Parkway and have the bridge built across. But at least 4 of the options that are out there right now, all of them are going to impact Celebrate. And just to set the record straight, a lot of people think that there's supposed to be a bridge continuing on across the parkway and across the river to Celebrate. And there was not. There may have been recently, there have been ideas introduced to put a bridge there, but there was never, the bridge was not supposed to go across there. And I talked to a neighbor friend of mine who was one of the first people to move into Celebrate. He said, I don't know what they're talking about. Said there was not supposed to be a bridge go across there, and it's been sold, it's a rumor, and everybody believes it. So please take into consideration that if you use Celebrate Parkway, it's going to totally divide our community. And it's not a matter of buyer beware, because when we moved in, none of us expected to have a bridge built across there. So I look forward to seeing whatever, we're going to have a survey in our community. We're going to have Ian come out and give us information on it. And we're all going to try to be involved in finding a solution. But I don't think it should be in our area. I think you all should work with Spotsy and go further west. So the other thing is that on your FAMPO vision that you're going to talk about tonight, There is, one of the projects is for an I-95 interchange at Gordon Shelton Boulevard. Please don't do that. If you continue, you bring the bridge, you bring the road across the bridge, and you put that Gordon Sheldon, we're gonna be, interchange, we're gonna be nothing but inundated by trucks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in person who wishes to speak?
Mr. Chair, I would like to just add just a couple comments to what Fran said. I'm Joe Bonds and I also live in Celebrate. Been here a number of times before. We have been reviewing the new plan that you'll see tonight, and we've been going over it very carefully. And as I look through it, there's a big potential in that document to affect many people's lives out in the Celebrate and surrounding area. And to have a meeting tonight and then a short month from now to have another meeting without really working to get out and get more public input, I think is wrong. I guess I would encourage you to either one, delay your decision for this until the June meeting, or between now and the May 15th meeting, take time and to go out and listen to what the people out in that area's got to say. Because, for example, Celebrate knows about it, but there are a lot of people on Green Deck. I've talked with a couple this last weekend. They have no clue as to what's going on, or this road's coming, or it's a potential or anything. So there's a lot of new people now that are all of a sudden thrown into the mix of what this alternative is going to be, and they have no idea what's going on. So I think it would behoove you to take time and to have some meetings or to work through a public participation process, have an open house, bring your maps, bring questionnaires, let people come and talk, let people see what you're doing. I mean, they're your constituents, they're the taxpayers that ultimately will pay for this. So take time and make sure that everybody really has a clear picture of what's going on, because right now, many people don't. And then the other thing I would say is that I know that I'm somewhat disappointed in the 5 alternatives that have come out, only in that I was hoping some people would think outside the box. And it seems like that box is just Celebrate that we're just doing new circles around the box. And we haven't thought outside the box or thought of new and different ways. So, you know, I was hoping for something different, and we didn't get that. And, you know, I'm not sure your alternatives really are going to address the issue. So again, I would just encourage you to either wait a month and make sure you do a public process to get people informed, or if you're going to do it the 15th, work with Polly or whoever you're going to do, and please get the word out. Let people know that you potentially could be affecting not only their livelihood, but where they live and their quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in person who would like to speak?
My name is Randy Bruce. I live in Celebrate as well. I don't have much to add to what's been said already. I'm looking at the preliminary report, and I had concerns with page 39, where you present the economic development cost, particularly for option 4. The road cost seems extremely low. And I think the assumption is you can take Celebrate Parkway, use it without a great deal of changing the structure of the road. Now, I don't think that's the case. And I would encourage to actually get VDOT out there and get more involvement, get a better estimate on that, because I don't think that's accurate. The other thing I wanted to say is, I moved to Celebrate in 2009. I'm a lifelong resident of this area. I was born in Port Royal, Virginia, went to Caroline County Public School, went to the University of Richmond. I remember when Fredericksburg was a city where, as a child, I came here as the biggest treat of my life, come to Port Royal on Saturday. Having said all that, I have seen at least 20 of these initiatives come and go over the years, building a bridge over the river. When I commuted from Fredericksburg, I loved the fact that they were being presented. But every time there was an issue with their neighbors to the south. And I think what you've done in terms of boxing in this area is to get around that issue this time, trying to minimize the impact in Spotsylvania County. I think it would be better to re-examine this entire project and try to get a greater sense of cooperation from the people to the south and see if you can come up with some additional options that are outside of this boxed-in area. For example, perhaps out there in New Post, where the Rappahannock, your bridge wouldn't cost that much to come across. You have existing road systems out there that could easily be modified to handle this. And it would be much less impact trying to go to Celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else here who would like to speak? Oh, yes.
Good evening, Matthew Schultz, 37 Serene Hills Drive, right here in Fredericksburg.
We met your wife at the last.
Yes, she came out and talked about taxes, huh? So I had to take kids to bed, so. Well, I'm in favor of a bridge crossing on the west side of 95. I prefer the path that goes down Celebrate Virginia Parkway. I don't know if any of you guys have been out there and drove down the road at all or not, but I've done it like 3 times in the last 2 weeks. One of the times was to take pictures of the cherry blossoms. A beautiful road, by the way. I mean, it is great. It's a 2-lane divided highway. You got substantial turn lanes that would make some of our back roads blush. I'll tell you that. Fire hydrants. It's a well lit. I mean, it's a great road. It would be a great signature piece for the bridge to go across and coming back across. It would match the aesthetics of the other side, like Wegmans that's over there and things like that. It would be perfect. That is the best location. It's $40 million cheaper. And when I read your guys' report, and that's enough of a reason alone. But one thing I would do is I would put considerations on it. I am not a fan of trucks, so I don't want trucks going across the bridge. You know what I mean? I want a safe route to cross the bridge to get over to places like Wegmans, Costco, FAM's over there. My kids go to music there. So I want a safe route to get across there. I want to tire and have to just constantly deal with the trucks. So I would have that consideration on that bridge right there on Celebrate Virginia Parkway, at least so the citizens, that live there wouldn't have to have the trucks going down there. I would prefer to have a truck route farther down on North 17 out that way. I don't think you just need one bridge. I think you need 2. And by the time you get the second one built, you're already going to need a third. They're putting houses in galore on 17 up and down it. They're approving them left and right. There's thousands more already approved this year alone. They're not going to stop. The other thing I would urge you guys to watch out for is the property down there at the end of Celebrate Virginia Parkway. It's being primed for something. I mean, that's a beautiful road. I mean, these studies shows that road is going to handle a lot more traffic. It absolutely has the ability to handle so much more traffic. So what traffic are we going to put down there? There's 2,500 to 3,000 homes down there right now. It's 5 more down there. I mean, that's about what that road can handle. So unless you want more houses down there, the bridge is probably the best route with a regional park. Turn that into a park, have bike routes going across that bridge. Go farther down, have a pedestrian bridge with bikes on it too, and create a loop up and down that river. We could have like a beautiful park there that would draw in people from the entire area. I mean, just for the bike trail alone. I grew up in bike trail country in Wisconsin. Sparta, Wisconsin is the bicycling capital of America. I don't ride a bike, but I know a lot of people do. So it would be great to have it, and it does draw in people from all over. So that's my 2 cents. You guys have a good night.
All right. Do we have anyone else here from the public who would like to speak in person? Yeah, there you go.
Hello, I'm Joe Brito from Stafford County. I represent over 4,600 people that have signed petitions for the interconnector and trail network. First, I want to thank the committee for bringing forward different river crossing proposals. I don't necessarily agree with the connection to Plantation Drive, but I'll get into that another time. There's basically 2 options that make sense. Okay, the other 2 options that connect to Green Bank Road, I think should be thrown out, and you probably do yourself a favor by deciding tonight not to consider those options before a couple hundred people that live on those roads come in here at the next meeting. But anyway, I've been, studying, river crossings for over 25 years. I was on the Transportation Advisory Group back then. I've read all the studies and so forth. And the fact of the matter is, you have a presentation tonight that's going to show that we really need a river crossing. So I support either option number 2 or option number 4. I think those are the best routes, and they should have a trail connecting them, along with connecting to the trails on both sides of the river. I really didn't make a speech. I've been busy emailing today. I'm going to be making a presentation at the Stafford Parks and Rec Commission meeting about the parks and the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail, or Belmont to Cannon Ridge Trail, this Thursday. And then I'm hoping to be at the Earth Day on Saturday. Have a little table set up. So anyway, I just want to remind everybody that the FAMPO survey had 78% support for a river crossing. So I think that's overwhelming, and I appreciate everything you all have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
My name is Pamela Taylor, and I live in the Celebrate community. I've lived there for about 10 years now. I used to commute from up to Columbia Pike. Traffic in this area is bad. Everybody can agree with that. And so after commuting for many years, I decided to Celebrate. I did my due diligence and looked at where the schools were, the fire stations, and all of that, because I did not want the traffic anymore. I'm in favor of a bridge, but just not down Celebrate. It would bring a lot of turmoil, I think, to the neighborhood. And if you've been down Celebrate Parkway, it is beautiful. We pay for the upkeep of some of that. Okay, so that it is beautiful. But if that bridge comes through there, it's going to end up looking like Route 1 or 95. If we could just, maybe if there was a way we could just keep it to Stafford residents, that would be great, but we can't do that. Okay. It's going to be open to everybody. And I just think that having that traffic come through there is not something that I wanted. It's not something that I planned for when I did my due diligence and looking at the area of the zoning and what I wanted. Okay. It would be expensive and costly for me to move. And I hope it doesn't come to that. I think that health problems, that's another consideration with traffic. And I hope that, my hope is that we can, work together to get a bridge, but just not things Celebrate. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public here in person who would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move to online. Do we have anyone online who would like to speak?
Yes. My name is John Kleckner. I live at 240 Long Point Drive. On slide number 36, expected bridge volume, there's an error in option 4, Long Bridge, in the number of trucks. The 2021 VDOT statistics state 18% of the Route 17 traffic is heavy commercial vehicles. That's trucks plus buses. All right, and that the traffic turning south onto I-95 is also 18% heavy commercial vehicles. Using the bridge volume that's here in this study, the number should be 9,982, not 676. And that's important because heavy commercial vehicles put an undue load on the bridge. There's a formula that VDOT has, and you basically take, in this case, 14%, which is 7,764 heavy commercial vehicles. You multiply it by 20, And the number of normal vehicles is 155,277. And to that, you add the 55,456. So you get a total of over 210,000 vehicles. That's the number of normal vehicles. And that's what should be used for designing the bridge, not 55,000. So that's for the bridge part. For Celebrate Parkway, you also have to include the local traffic. And Mr. Silver has estimated that's at 14,000. So for Celebrate Parkway, we're looking at 224,000 vehicles. The 4-lane Celebrate Parkway was designed for 30,000 vehicles. And the 6-lane parts are designed for 45,000. The expected number of normal vehicles greatly exceeds the design capacity. So Celebrate Parkway will have to be rebuilt. The road south of Long Bridge must be reviewed to see if their design capacities have been exceeded. The costs on slide 39 should be updated based on 4 times the number of normal vehicles. Also on slide 39, we see 2 projects cited, one for 114 million, one for 127 million. Those are for 3 lanes on bridges, not the 4 to 8 lanes that are needed. Also, they're for shorter bridges than what's on option 4. And also that area, the geology is better known. When we're talking about option 4, we're going to put a bridge for the first time, and who knows what kind of geology problems we're going to run into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online who wishes to speak? Hearing none, do we have any written comments submitted?
There's one, I believe.
From Wilson Greenlaw, we received this email. I support a bridge crossing even though I'm sensitive to the environmental impacts. However, I believe there is no solution for our region that doesn't include a river crossing. I implore you guys to get it done as quickly as possible and choose the best solution to the problem, not the cheapest, for all the hard work.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion, I will just point out in the very back of the stapled packet, you will see a small amendment to Resolution 2021, noting that the report will need to be submitted to FHA for approval. That was not in the original document that went out, so there is a small amendment there.
So moved as amended.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. All right, moving on to our action items, 7A, the Fredericksburg Train Station Platform and Bridge Rehabilitation Project Update.
Mr. Dallas Richards is here from the team doing the construction. He's just going to give us a 2-minute update or 3-minute update on what's going on. There's a slide for you on the screen, and he's just going to tell us where we are in the project and what we can look forward to in the future. Thank you, Bill.
Morning, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Ian, I came by a few weeks ago as we were working on the project. I'm Dallas Richards. I serve as Chief Engineer for VRE. I see a few familiar faces in the audience here, so thank you. I would say if we could get a few more people on the trains, we wouldn't have to worry about so much on the traffic. Just make that plug. The project here, as you've seen, a lot of the road closures, which we're moving along and then have now concentrated at Charles Street. I'm just here to give you an update on the project, kind of where we are, where we're headed, what it includes. One of the parts that I think will be most beneficial to our passengers and for safety, there's going to be a new set of stairs right behind this building, literally right behind the building that will come off the end of the platform. We're extending the 2 platforms where they used to be in service at the south end, about 125 feet each. This will give us a full length, a much longer platform to land our 8-car consist on the of the train set, and then folks will be able to exit and come out to the parking lot without having to cross Princess Anne, which has been blocked. So makes a lot safer migration, if you will, from the lot to the station. That's one of the main things. Also, as we're doing this, we're doing what we consider dental concrete repairs. The bridges and the structures are in good condition, a serviceable condition, but have some age to them. And so we're going in just like you do with fillings, going and doing some surface repairs on the concrete. You'll see that happening Street right now. On the eastbound lanes of Charles Street are closed right now. And you'll see these closures migrate over time, a few 4 to 6 weeks each lane, and they'll migrate. I think the order is going to be Charles and then Sophia and then back, and then closing it out. When we're all done, all of the concrete structure will get a facelift, if you will, a nice clean paint job. The canopies at the station will be painted as well, new signage, new tactile, lots of new things will look very nice and be very serviceable for a very long time. I think our project schedule, we're about 3 months into a 24-month calendar, 20-month calendar of total projects. So you can expect to see a lot of things ongoing. Up in the coming weeks, you'll see more project work at the platform level at the station. And that's about it. I'm at a few minutes, I know, I won't take much of your time, but happy to entertain questions.
Do we have any questions? I just have one. Is there any updates to did I hear updates to ticket kiosks, or for those who don't have the app on their phone?
So the TVMs are located up on the tops. We plan to keep them where they are today, unless I don't have any changes otherwise. But we are trying to encourage passengers to use the mobile app for a lot of reasons. We are getting new validators as well, so there will be some of those located on the platforms, probably in the same locations as the current machines. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, moving on to item 7B, FAMPO vision plan and projects. Mr. Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the unfortunate things about sending out an agenda, and you'll see this with the river crossing slides as well, is that people have access to the documents before they have the explanation, right? And the trouble with that is that you can sometimes make up your mind about something before you know everything about the presentation, the documents, before you've had a chance to ask questions. Trying to do here is follow a logical progression of concepts. January, we had a presentation from the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, this new organization that's coming to solve rail problems and help with congestion by improving the service of the rail system. Then in February, we had a presentation from OmniRide about their future plans. We had a presentation from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation about how they fit into all the various forms of transit. Then we moved to a workshop. And the workshop purpose was for us to talk less formally about congestion, land use, transit, and a grid system of roads to see how all of those things interact with each other. How does congestion behave when all of those things are operating? The next logical step is for us to say what we're doing here, which is, what is our vision? Like, what do we really want to achieve, right? And we as staff can't answer that question for the whole of FAMPO. So this presentation is not, here's the final product, we want you to make a decision about it. This is a presentation to say, here are some basic concepts that would fit in a vision, and we've borrowed some of it from other areas. And then a list of projects under each heading. Now, I need to explain those projects before we get there, so that you don't misunderstand what the purpose is. The purpose is for you to look at that and go, I like that project because it fits with that concept. And it will help us solve the transportation problems of our region. And I think we should carry on down that road of working on that project. Or you look at it and go, I don't think that's the right solution for that problem. I think we should take that one off. So this is like a shopping basket of projects that have been talked about in our region and that we've done studies on. Not every one of them is the right solution. In fact, some of them conflict. I'll give you an example. Some of the planning staff from the city of Fredericksburg have given us the understanding that they would consider a new interchange on the I-95 that comes into Gordon Shelton to not be something that should be built in addition to a river crossing in the area, but that those two things are alternatives to each other. So that if you have a river crossing and some other interventions, you may no longer need the off-ramp onto Gordon Shelter, right? So just because both of those are on the list, it's not the staff of FAMPO saying, hey, you should have both of those projects. It's the staff of FAMPO saying, here's a list of projects that we've talked about, we've done studies on, we've had presentations on. Which one of these things do you think is important enough for us to continue with? And so we'd like to slowly build a vision. We don't want to do this in a one bang and get everybody worked up, have a big fight, not agree on anything, and get nothing out of it. We want to slowly build this. So we're giving you this presentation tonight for you to just give us some of your initial thoughts. What do you think about those projects? Do they fit with the vision? Do they fit with those principles? And we just want to hear what you have to say. Then we'll go work on it some more, modify it, bring it back at a later date to take it a bit further. And when we've got some consensus developing in the region, we will then have a vision, and all we do is write it in a report or write it in a statement. Everyone get it? It's not like, here's the answer, say yes or no. No. This is like a smorgasbord of things, and hopefully the workshop, the presentations, everything else we're doing are helping all of us to come to some kind of consensus. So go through these. We stole this, not our words. In fact, we double stole this because Broward County in Florida put this at the beginning of their vision, and we kind of thought this was quite a cool statement. Vision is not just a picture of what could be, it's an appeal to our better selves, a call to becoming something more. We are looking at the year 2075, not the year 2025. The idea here is to try and think about the long-term future, beyond the long-range transportation plan even, and say, what are we going to need to do in this region to make sure that we don't get gridlock in the future, in the long future? It tries to go further than just the immediate future. So that's what we're trying to say. How could this be better in 2075? It's an aspirational vision to facilitate a paradigm shift from the historical approach to growth, development, and transportation investments that are not achieving all of the desired outcomes. We're achieving some of the desired outcomes. The new interventions by the state and VDOT to build 2 new bridges on the I-95 is contributing, is taking us some way down towards a better future. Going to ease the congestion on the I-95 has a role that it's going to play, right? But we're not achieving all of the desired outcomes that we need, as we've heard people complain about what's going on. This vision, we, all of us, are illustrating what that shift should look like, what this MPO, what the localities, what the partners can begin doing to move this region to the desired future in 2075. Okay. Why? Well, the population growth and the business investment is currently driving a congestion crisis. How do we know that? Well, we see the results, and the data, the numbers tell us that the population growth rate in the GWRC region, bigger than just FAMPO, is the fastest growing in the state of Virginia, and it's not slowing down. So when the population growth rate carries on at a ridiculously high rate, it's going to cause congestion, no matter how clever you are with what you build and so on. It's going to continue. This population could double every 30 years if the rate continues, right? That's a big number to deal with. Might double only every 40 years, might double only every 50 years, but it's doubling at quite a rapid rate. And we have to think about the impacts of that. And we're building new businesses. There's also business growth that is happening all over the place. Regional mobility is limited by an inadequate roadway grid network, which we talked about in the workshop, limited transit options, and development sprawling out from the key transportation infrastructure. Those are just broad brushstrokes of what's going on around us. The first day I was hired, the then chairman of FAMPO, who's no longer with us, said to me, tell us what we should do in this region to improve the situation. And I was like, I can't say anything on day one. I don't know enough about this region. And so I said, well, I'm not saying anything. Let me first learn about the region before I tell you anything. Well, we're now almost 3 years down the line. starting to think about what we need to do now. Got a good mood at FAMPO now. People are being more cooperative. Maybe we can think about how to do this together. Next one. So these are just, we've listed some of the things that are impacting our transportation system. You know, the freight delay times and bottlenecks, the fast growing population, the infrequent transit, the access challenges for transit commuting options, limited resources. There's never enough money, right? Any one of you who sit on county boards or the city council know there's never enough money for everything. There's X resources and we have to produce Y result, and they never add up. The lower density development, long commutes, etc. You've seen it all before. Next one. So the objectives of this vision are on the following slides. Below each objective is a list of potential projects. That's the key word, potential projects. We're not saying you have to do these. We're saying, here's the ones we've talked about, but now start thinking about which ones are appropriate. And you're the policy committee, so I know you're the ones who are supposed to talk about the policy. That's what should we do. Please discuss these and give us your comments. So objective one. Objective one is all about mitigating congestion. That's the big thing. How do we do that, right? So policies, and feel free to add others or to change this one if you don't like it. We're just saying increase roadway capacity at strategic locations to improve regional mobility. You'll see in the slides later, we're not saying don't have transit, right? There's multiple slides here. But firstly, we have to increase the roadway capacity. If the population grows and everybody brings a car, you've got to increase the capacity because there's a simple thing called the volume to capacity ratio. More cars, you've got to have more capacity, otherwise you've got gridlock. That's a simple equation. It doesn't take any fancy modeling to tell you that. Next slide. So what are the projects that we think, and here's where you need to exercise some judgment, and it's not one night to give us all the answers and we fix it, it's just give us your opinions. Which of these projects do you think we should, as a region, focus on the most? That can be our big high-level projects that we want to tackle over the next 40 years. So which ones, right? Some of these are already begun. Widening Harrison Road to prepare for an interchange. An interchange on Harrison Road onto I-95. And the interchange at Gordon Shelton Boulevard. Remember my comment earlier? Don't necessarily have to do all of these. It's like, which ones should we be pursuing? Upgrade Route 3 interchange and add capacity to Route 3 in both directions. In some cases, that's hard to do because you've got historical infrastructure. You've got cemeteries either side of the road in some points, right? So increase capacity on 610 and US 17. Some of that is being considered now. Implement a new river crossing. This doesn't say where, when, or how. It just says maybe we should find one. Maybe all of the ones in the current study are wrong, right? I don't know. This is what we should talk about. Those are some options. I've printed out the other thing which we emailed you in the pack, which is further lists of projects which we have had in our studies in the last 4 or 5 years. So you may think that these aren't the right ones, that we should be prioritizing some of these, and that's okay. But we want to hear from you if that's the case, and we'll keep adjusting this thing until there's 3 or 4 projects under every heading that people feel are the right ones that we should be tackling. Based on the studies, based on the jurisdiction's input, based on your input. Objective 2. Increase access. Now, this is not about congestion specifically, this is about access. Access to jobs, to commerce, to entertainment, education, recreation, etc. Right? We've spoken about the problem with the grid network in the workshop. Now we're speaking about it again. So policies that we could suggest are improving the roadway grid network by adding the missing links and modernizing the transit system. Right? Again, it's high level. We're not saying, dear Fred Transit, you need to do these 2 little detailed things. It's at a high level. What are the big things to think about? Next one. So, here are some projects. Not necessarily the right ones, but here are some ones that have come out of our studies. The new Western Network, which is linking Enon Road up to Centerport Parkway, from Centerport Parkway up to Mine Road Extension or Courthouse Road, right? Extend Gateway Boulevard in the city of Fredericksburg. Improve the roadway network to the VA clinic. The county's already down that road, has a number of projects in the pipeline. Develop more frequent, reliable, local transit, right? What does that look like? We're not telling everybody how to do it in detail, but we're saying we should do that. Support development of high capacity transit routes. That's a little different to a regular bus. Support commuter connections like VRE, okay? Identify new connections across the Rappahannock River west of the I-95. Identify new connections over or under the I-95 to improve access the other way, east-west across the region. And there are many more in that document of what we've talked about. Third one, improve safety. So thankfully, we've just embarked on starting the process of the safety action plan, so we have an advantage. We're going to be digging into those details. Identify projects out of that. Provide infrastructure for the disabled population. Develop complete streets for safe bicycling, walking, and getting on a bus. Identify environmental safety concerns. Hazardous pollutants. We have other environmental concerns in the region that we need to think about. How do we fix those? Next one. So here's some projects that we might need to do that. Fill in the gaps in the sidewalks. Everybody here complains we built 1 mile of sidewalk and then there's nothing. So we need to maybe think about how we deal with that. Provide sidewalk ramps and where desirable, audible traffic signals for the hearing impaired. You have to know where the hearing impaired people are on a map, because you can't put audible signals everywhere, but think through that. Rehabilitate the soft shoulders on rural roads, or harden them. Rebuild them in some cases. Increase crosswalks at unsafe intersections, etc. Economic vitality. What are the policies? Well, here's some suggestions. Coordinate housing development, commercial expansion, and the transportation. One of the things the Infrastructure and Jobs Act says that we as FAMPO are supposed to do is to work with localities to coordinate where the new development is with where we're going to put the new transportation systems, the roads, etc. Partners to optimize the freight movement in our region. Now that's road and rail, there's both. And by the way, CSX says that they are moving more freight through our region than the trucks move on the I-95 and US 1 combined. How much freight that is. Connect communities via robust multimodal networks. Lead air quality good. This is a legal requirement. Encourage public involvement, like you all tonight, in the transportation planning process and the decision-making process. Projects. One new I-95 truck stop, safety rest area we need to think about. Don't know where yet, but the current ones are overflowing into the shoulder and the safety lanes. Look for the freight bottlenecks. Get them resolved, right? There are various ways we could do that. Widening Marrison Road and the construction of the VCR Trail extension. There's a shared use path that can be in the same area to connect to projects that we've got ongoing. Capacity and safety improvements to Butler Road and US 17 business with bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Capacity and safety improvements to Lafayette Boulevard with bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Are these the ones that we should be focused on? Next one. Livable communities. This is about lifestyle, about the environment, etc. Link housing development and transportation. Promote conservation of the rural character of some of our localities and discourage sprawling development. Bob Schneider spoke about cul-de-sacs everywhere, further and further out, with lots of cul-de-sacs developing that you can't get easily in and out of with the transportation system. Complete streets. That's the buzzword federally at the moment with transit, sidewalks, bike paths. filling the gaps in the sidewalks we spoke about before. Plan improvements for disabled residents in the street design, expand the regional trail network, promote transit-oriented development to reduce trips, identify environmental concerns such as flooding, which we had in southern Stafford, heat islands, which we can do a whole presentation on. Next one. Here are some projects. 2 trails, shared use park in Chatham Heights, Central Park, shared use park. Again, the Tidewater Trail. Work with our local transit partners to identify projects that support and improve mode choice. Work with our partners and localities to identify these potential future flooding issues and deal with them. Look at heat islands and how those impact our local environment. What we can do to reduce the heat. Next one. Expand funding opportunities. So when you've got projects that you need to develop, how do you fund it, right? So you fully utilize the current funding that we know about. Identify additional local, state and federal grants that we might benefit. Explore potential other forms of taxation that could be brought to the transportation system as the gas tax slowly over time reduces. We need to replace it. Identify sources of funding for the local match on larger projects. Many of the federal grants require 20% local match. Got to find the money somewhere to pay the 20%. If you want $100 million for your project, you have to find a portion of it. It's an easy one. Retain and fund institutional resources and staff to implement the desired thing. So that's about the office space, computers, the number of staff for FAMPO, but also the jurisdictions. If the jurisdictions don't have transportation planners to work with FAMPO, it gets hard to get things done, right? So there are 7 objectives. What do you all think about those? And are there specific projects you think we should be working on as a group and projects you think we should not be working on as a group? We can then adjust this, build it over time, build consensus. Mr. Chair, I don't want to take the whole night, but I'd love to hear some comments from policy committee members.
All right, we'll start with Ms. Hayes.
So thank you very much for this. A couple of questions. First, 2075 is a really long way away. I doubt any of us will be here. But secondly, some of these things are in.
I'm not gonna die that young.
Well, I don't know. There might be new technology out there that comes that we can live forever. Who knows? Some of these things that are identified are really are not agreeable with what my constituents want. Okay, so they do not want high density. That has been very clear. That many of the projects that have come down the pike recently have been very contested. They don't want high density. And I see that low density here is, I'm not saying we should be sprawled everywhere, but the high density type of thing is a problem. I've said it before in this meeting that this shared use path along Benchmark, I think that there is a better place for that than down Benchmark. I think it would have too much impact there. And so if you're asking what I would say to take off, that would be one of them. The shared use path to Spotsylvania VRE and Germanna Community College, I don't really know what the purpose of that would be. Most of the students that go to Germanna drive. I don't know how many students would actually utilize that. So that I would want to know a little bit about that. But so I'm having a little bit of problem reconciling some of these desires, and I understand them, but I know my constituents aren't on the same page. And so just wanted to put that out there.
That's helpful. Can you think of a project your constituents would want that would help us deal with region or access issues?
Well, what's that? Yeah, bring the horses back. Everybody wants widened roads, but it's expensive to do that. That also has an impact. So I think in my area, they would love to see Route 2 widened, but that's way down the road. I think that would be something that, again, is going to have an impact for sure. I'm concerned about that.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to provide any comments at this time? Mr. Kelly.
Looking at some of these projects, and let's take the classic one. We've been schizophrenic about I-95 for years. We've focused on it, and we threw up our hands and said we didn't want to deal with it. It shouldn't be our problem to deal with. The project costs on those are horrendous, which we don't have, probably never get in the long term funding. So should be, when I look at, I've broken this down into 3 components: the road component, the transit component, and trails pedestrian component. And I break down the road component into I-95, then what I'll call primary, which is Route 1, 3, and 17. And then I do secondary roads and everything else to feed off of them. I've got an issue with continuing banging our heads on I-95 from the standpoint, if you look at the projects, as much as we're all hailing what is being developed, we look at the extensions that were done, that we got funded for through Smart Scale, only because the CTV went down and pulled them out of the bottom of the list. They scored like shit, excuse me. The other parts that we've gotten done are being funded outside of Smart Scale, and every time we put the extensions out on 95, they don't get funded. So with the amount of money, time, and effort, how much more time do we want as a board in this vision to focus on Interstate 5? I do like the components in this as it relates to mobility within the region, and also looking at 1, 3, and 17 projects on there to keep things within the region. I'm assuming from what we're proposing, one of the questions I had when I looked at this is this going to be constrained or unconstrained? Because that really kind of, I think the first thing we need to do is define what looking at transit, looking at trails, pedestrian, looking at roads, and then breaking those down. What are the priorities? What is the main focus going to be? Limited resources, where are we going to place it? Frankly, I'm not ready to get into projects yet. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And we've had this. Years ago, we talked about we are going to dedicate X percentage of funding on trails, and that's what we're going to try to do this and try to do this. We've never been able to do it. I think we need to decide, what the main focus is going to be. Is it going to be transit? Is transit going to be something we're going to spend a lot more time on than we've done in the past? All we're hearing EDOT now is they want us to do a more multimodal, less on building new asphalt and everything else. Everything that we're building now with new asphalt, even we've come back and said 95 within the next 5-10 years, what we're building now is going to be a problem with congestion again down the road. So where do we put the priorities? Do we have a conversation to say, you know what, I-95, I mean, it is important to us because most of our people drive up to Washington, D.C. and come back, and commerce and everything else like that. But at the same time, every time we try to do something and the amount of money with what limited resources we have, Chris, you've made some very good points over the time that we've got some local regional areas that we should really probably focus on to get mobility within the region. So I'm really not ready to talk about specific projects. I'd rather talk about moving forward, what is going to be our core priorities? Is it going to be roads? If it's going to be roads, where does I-95 fit in as it relates to Route 1, 3, and 17, as it relates to secondary roads? So I'd like to get that first, and I'd like to get a better handle, and I know we're going to do this at some point, but have a very good discussion on funding. Under the current dynamics of funding, it's going to be very difficult to do any of these projects of any significant cost. It just is. I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to come to some consensus looking that far down the road. I would say that as we have this conversation, I know it's very difficult to do when we start throwing the word constituent around. This is supposed to be a regional plan looking at things and how they fit for everybody. And sometimes that means, and I hope that I've done on a few occasions, I fully realize there's projects that I think for the city of Fredericksburg that are more important to us that are going to be built or done in Stafford, Spotsylvania County than in the city, because you guys have so much more greater impact on it. And I look at it that way. So I think as we have this discussion, it needs to be understanding. And frankly, when it comes to the issue of density, which I have a problem with, as my colleagues in the city know, with regards to the city, I don't know why we're pushing it as much as we are compared to knowing what's going on in North Spotsylvania and what's going on in South Stafford. That's an issue. But at the same time, in your next door, you look at what Charlottesville and Albemarle County have done when they're looking at doing a lot more tighter, more dense in areas where it's easier to get in and out of instead of letting it sprawl out. I mean, that's a conversation we have to have with our constituents. It's basically, if you don't look at some of these things, or at least get them to consider it, then you got to say, all right, if we continue down this road, the continued cost of trying to keep those things up with the services and everything necessary, there's going to be a hell of a lot more expense in the long term. You know, I'm asking that as we continue this discussion, we look at all aspects of it and look at it as a regional movement, because frankly, there's very few projects in the city that are going to seriously impact movement within the region, potential interchanges and things like that. There are projects, I'm concerned about what's going on in South Stafford as time goes on and how that's going to impact our downtown. You know, we had Sherwood Forest at one time, there was some big housing developments going on the other side of the Shadow Bridge. You guys are going gangbusters to our south, and you're in Northern County, because that's where you're doing your development. Well, I want to know how some of that is not going to basically turn us into a gridlock road system on Route 3, Route 1, and everything else in the city. So I need to sit down, and this needs to be for us a really serious regional conversation. But first things first, to me, we've got to, what are the priorities going to be moving forward? Is it going to be roads? Is it going to be transit? Is it going to be local roads? What's it going to be?
Ms. Baumke first, and then Mr. Yakubowski.
No, thank you for your presentation. This is a great conversation. I'm not going to talk very long, but I kind of look at this as a long-term wish list. I don't think a lot of it on here will happen in reality. Maybe in 2060, 70. My concern is when you look at what happened last week, there was an accident on 95. There were a number of things that happened in the region, and if you were out traveling, you just sat, you didn't move. I see people shaking their heads. It was pretty painful. For me, in South Stafford, we have to have another river crossing. That is of paramount importance. We just don't have, I mean, you look at Roanoke and some of these other areas and the number of bridges that they have in their cities, it's amazing. It's like, well, yeah, no wonder we have this massive congestion right next to 95. I'm very concerned about Truslow and Enon roads and that whole area in there. When you look at Stafford County, we haven't approved any rezonings except for the one main line on Route 17. But if you look at our Board of Supervisors, we haven't approved a rezoning and I don't know when. So most of the growth in our county is all from by right development. And we have 2,000 units still that haven't been platted, but that have been approved, that have yet to be built. Yeah.
I can make sure we know.
Right. And when I go out, when I was reelected a year and a half ago, and I went out and I talked to all these people that are over in the new part of Leland Station, they're all from Northern Virginia. They got a bigger house with a lower payment, and some of them commute, some of them are teleworking. You know, I don't know. There's a letter that came out last week. I guess it depends on what government agency you work for that you have to go back to work now. But you know, that's all up in the air. In my mind, we have to do something about That is the most important to me right now, is the north-south corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this, and I do plan to be around in 2075. So.
You. Let's see, yeah.
You'll be going to Spotsy board meetings.
I don't plan on being on the board, and
I will come visit you and we can laugh about how naive we were in 2023, right?
yeah, if we remember what it, yeah. We have over 12,000 units that have been approved in the past 10 years that have not yet been built on the books.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and more coming. So, what I don't, and I agree with everything that you guys have said, so I don't want to repeat a lot. What I would add to it though is, I don't also want us to focus on the grand projects and miss out on the smaller ones that can actually work. I know a lot of this push for Harrison Road, we looked at it years ago and then it died and then now it's back. And it seems like we only have 3 things that we think about: 95, 17, Route 1. It's like no other projects ever that can ever be considered of or planned for. I know we have talked before off of Lansdowne doing stuff between the city and the county. Those kind of projects that might not be glamorous, let's say, but that would be very effective. I would like to see if we can dig up more of those. And, you know, Stafford, you guys got them. I'll support you 100%. The city also. Regionally, yes, but there will be projects that will benefit Stafford 100%, and you get nothing out of it. But that's how the region works, is that we support each other when it comes to these projects, and it has to be very balanced. But the regional projects that we have, we can't and I was looking, and when you said it, Matt, about it's all on 95 centric. Everything is. It just is, how can we get to there better so that we can send our people up north? But then we have FRA on the other hand, who's trying to get jobs to locate here. So we're very schizophrenic when it comes to what we want to be as an area. And so I-95, yes, let's do what we can. Let's make it the best that we can, but let's not overlook the interconnections that we do desperately need. And yes, I was sitting on that in that traffic the other day. I will tell you, I actually was talking to Lori. I was on Lansdowne Road and I said, oh, there's a train up ahead. She said, oh yeah, that takes forever. Like 35 minutes later, I finally got to Route 2, right? And she said, oh, that was a long train. I said, no, the train was gone 20 minutes ago. It was the traffic from that accident.
Exactly.
And Google and Waze and everybody send you all the way around. So no longer is traffic on 95 only being 95 or Route 1 or the adjacent roads. You're going to have people going out and, you know, all over the place trying to get around it. So it's going to affect us. So we need to have those roads be able to move traffic in a better way.
Thank you. So, Ms. Gear.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little sleepy, so don't mind me if I kind of stumble over myself. I think it's great that we're doing this and looking at this. To me, it's a rare thing for government to be proactive and for us to look ahead like this. It's very important because otherwise we're just putting out fires and we're not very successful at that. And it keeps changing, and growth is a facet, it's a product of human behavior. So when we figure out how to control that, you know, let me know. But until then, I think we just have to plan. And, you know, even if I'll be in my 70s or 80s, it's not about me. We're making these decisions for our children, grandchildren, so on. And if people had thought about that way back, then we wouldn't be dealing with some of the things that we are dealing with now. And so I think this is important to think about this. I feel like we need multiple conversations on this. I can go through here and tell you, you know, a few things that I would like to do. I'm trying to take notes, you know, as far as what other people are saying. I appreciate the solidarity with, you know, dealing with each other's problems. I think that'll get us to a good place. You know, downtown Stafford, we don't know what's happening there yet. I've requested, and the board has requested to see, you know, what are our options to take down the housing density there with other developments coming around. We haven't seen that yet. So there's a lot of stuff in flux here still that will be for a while. I think it would be good for us to understand where are we really going with this. Perhaps we could all just kind of send an email and say, like this, don't like this, whatever, but what's the direction other than just saying we like or don't like some of this and want to look at it, I think would be more helpful for giving feedback. I just feel like it's very open-ended.
Chairman, the comment earlier, how do you all feel about that idea of discussing what the, was it principles?
Priorities.
Priorities, the priorities. What should the priorities of the region be? That could be 5 points on a page, right? You want us to provoke you all with a list of 15 priorities that you can pick from, and then we survey you and get a list of what people think is important.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just remind us the conversation we had around the exercise a month or so ago. That was somewhat productive. We talked a little bit about maybe taking that exercise a bit further, eliminating the jurisdictional boundaries. Wonder if that mapping exercise without jurisdictional boundaries, with maybe some data on it, as far as counts, might be productive. We could sit around a map and sort of pencil out what we all think might be useful as far as thought.
Do you want on the map population densities and transportation counts? Or what
I was thinking transportation counts, but it could be both, or maybe even other pieces of data.
I think, yeah, the more information in that.
I think what we talked about doing is taking like the comp plans, just a general layout and whatever we're planning to do in the specific areas, and then you can look at it and kind of go, what you're going to do is you're going to look at it, you're going to go, holy, but at least then you'll have an idea of, it's a very interesting, and we did it years and years and years ago, where we actually did that. We sat down and we looked at the map. If you look what is going on in Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline, even King George, it's gonna be an eye-opening.
Were you there for our workshop? I think you were
Yeah,
out.
no, I came in late, but I was there.
Oh,
But
okay.
we had done this before.
Right.
And that to Chris's point, we kind of keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back, and we really never come out of it where these are the priorities, this is the direction we're going to go, this is what the focus is going to be. But we've done at least 2 or 3 shreds regionally, including other ones with little Legos and everything else and densities. And when we went, that one we did anywhere from Caroline County north, and we put them in there and we moved things around.
All right, Ms. Hayes?
So maybe because you all have been on this board or policy committee the most, and you've done all these exercises and just spinning wheels, maybe what needs to happen for the people that have been on here, maybe you put down what hasn't worked. And then we go from there and say, what have we tried that we haven't gotten anywhere with? And then what can we do to move forward? If this exercise is something, I unfortunately had to leave our last meeting, so I wasn't privy to that exercise. But if that's something that you've done before that hasn't really gone anywhere, maybe we need to go a different direction.
I've heard some of, I know, Chris, you've been around a long time too, and I know Meg has been around a long time. It's not tried. You use the term tried and what we tried and worked or didn't work. We've seldom gotten, if I can say this, to the tried point. We talk about this, we get to a planning point with it, and then it just, for some reason, kind of goes sideways into something else. What the ultimate success of this process is going to be is we're actually going to come out of this with, let's try something and actually try it.
Follow through. Yes, Ms. Danucci.
So I just wanted to kind of get back to the projects in front of us and just provide just my quick feedback. I agree with Supervisor Bomke regarding the river crossing. I think if we're talking about intermobility regarding our region, that is imperative, especially for Stafford County. And when I noticed on here the widening of Mountain View Road, just knowing where, I am in the North Stafford corridor, Mountain View Road is a major road that it was never meant to be traveled on like it is now. Now it's literally like an alternative to Route 1 to go north to south. And it leads into Centerport Parkway, which is where our airport is. That's where a lot of our economic development is going to be. I don't see Centerport Parkway on this list, so I definitely like to add that on here. And its connection to Mountain View Road, leading out to either Route 1 or Enon or Truslow, because that literally could make a U, like Mountain View and Centerport all essentially lead back to Truslow or Enon, depending which direction you go. So I like that Mountain View is on here.
But I think it's a big miss if we don't look at what we're gonna do with Centerport Parkway as well.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else wish to share any feedback?
Oh, and that would be a big way to get to the river crossing too.
All right, Ms. Gray, did you want to continue your?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Okay.
So, this is a lot of information to provide feedback on for all of us right now. Would it be helpful for staff for us to go over this and maybe send some emails back with some points on our thoughts on each of these that we have thoughts on, or?
So all of the projects in the presentation and all of the projects on this list and all of the projects that are in the long-range transportation plan are all projects that have been studied in this region.
Right.
They're all projects that somebody voted to say this is a good project, and they're all projects that are at some level of interest, right? However, when it comes to allocating funds, all of that goes out the window. Everybody focuses on my street that I want to get funded.
Right.
I'm letting you take off one of mine.
Yeah, but that's good.
I'll take her money.
I'm gifting that.
What we're trying to do here a little bit, which maybe hasn't been successful for a while, is to say, what is the big picture, what we're trying to achieve? So that when we go to fund a project, we understand where that fits in that big picture. So we know that it's going to add up to these 4 other things together, make an even bigger bang, right?
Got it. I totally understand. I'm just wondering how would you like us to get this feedback to you? Because there's a lot and you want us to look over.
So if you want to email us on each of the projects, what you think, all that I'm looking for at this stage with this presentation is to say, what are the, don't kill me, what are the larger projects or the ones that will have more significant impact that really fit with the vision of where we're trying to go in the future and that fit with these principles. So we can't build everything. Right. So what is going to help us with congestion? We've got all the studies, many of them online. You can read them when midnight, you're wide awake and you don't know what to do. There's reading that will keep you busy for months.
Put you right to sleep.
But what we always do is that my corner needs to be fixed. I'm going to make sure that FAMPO funds this one corner. But there's no concept of the total movement of traffic in the region, the total movement of transit in the region. It's only my one project. And the idea behind this exercise, we borrowed it from Broward County in Florida, where they said, not 2075, but what should we be trying to achieve by 2100, right? And then they picked the main interventions. I won't call them big, I'll call them the main interventions we need to achieve to be able to make this region function well by 2100. So if you want to go through that list and highlight the 5 that you think are the key or whatever, we'll collect that information. I'm happy to make a map with the traffic counts on it and do that as well.
I think that's productive.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Yakubowski and then Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, and I want to say that we shy away from the large projects. What I'm saying is that sometimes what we do here or even in our own jurisdictions is we see the big project and it's unattainable. And so we don't do anything because we get stymied because we can't do that. And we never look at what we could do. Not that we don't have that on a plan, because, one day the federal government might just print some more money and, build something else. That's fine, but I just don't want us to not do anything. And I think of FAMPO more as it's a regional, because it is a regional transportation network, not just mine. And by the way, I don't get stuff mine, by the way. I don't even get my street plowed when it snows. So
I didn't mean you specifically. I mean,
no, I know, but we need to think of those projects because the river crossing, while it will help Stafford more on paper, it will help Swansea too, because there's plenty of things that Spotsylvanians do in Stafford that we then won't have to take the interstate or Route 1 or some other way to get around. It's the interconnectability that we need there and in other spots, and including the city. And I think, Matt, and you've said this for years, you get rid of those lines and then it really comes into focus better. And I just don't want us to have the big project that we can't do, so we don't do the little ones.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Kelly.
I would build on that, what Tim brought up. part of it for me is this is a list of projects and everybody, there's a constituency for every one of these projects in this room and out in the public. But there's, to me, for most people sitting here, there's no context to it. That's where the mapping it comes in, where you can see these projects in the context of what is going on in the region so you can look at them and their impact on the region. And I think that's what you need to have some context to this instead of just a list. You need to see what is Stafford doing, what is Spotsylvania doing, what is King George doing, what is Caroline doing, and then these projects start going. Okay, I can understand what the rationale is or not what the rationale is here.
Sorry to keep, but to build on that is that when you have all these projects, how do they interact with each other too? If you have a top 10 list, if you do number 6, number 7, you might not need number 2 and number 3. But if you do them in a vacuum, then you have no clue what it does to everything else. And that's why I come back to Harrison Road, because that was my district for a while and it's been redistricted. But it's back again. And we were told years ago that actually what would be better than an interchange was some CD lanes. I'm going back like 25 years ago. CD lanes from Route 3 to Harrison to take that local traffic off. And then they didn't want to do it because if you don't have northbound and southbound, they don't do them. But now all of a sudden we're going to do an interchange. It's going to interfere with people, with neighborhoods that are right there. So what is the study? What is the reason that that is back? I personally don't like it. But if some numbers show that this is the best way because it relieves 126 and the Route 3 exit, then fine. But then you're putting all that traffic. What does it do to the interior roads? And Harrison's going to have to be improved. So we can't look at these things in isolation. We have to look at them all together. And I like the idea, Tim, put them all on a map, put it all together, and you kind of shuffle it around and go, this is what we need. Now what can we do? And then we pick away at doing those things. And again, if it benefits Stafford more than Spotsy, and we get 3% extra traffic on Route 3 from a river crossing, I don't really care. I think that those folks are going to come and go to the town center and go shop. That's beneficial for us. We don't know what they're going to be doing there. But that 3% shouldn't hinder me from supporting it if it helps 17, because you guys need help up there. So anyway, I'll stop.
Ms. Bumke.
Golly, I lost my train of thought because so the fact that the two of you have used the term schizophrenic is really not a good thing. Okay, but probably accurate.
She doesn't mean that.
I would also like to see, since we have 2,000 units, you have 12,000 units. Well, I'm not looking at you. Yeah. I don't know how many you all have, but I think it would also be really important to have those on the map. Where are they projected to be? Because we know.
And are they real viable? Like we have some
Right.
never happen.
Well, they have been approved and they're sitting waiting to.
So yours are rezonings.
Yes.
Okay, ours are not.
Don't the by rights that.
Yeah,
ours on a map is bad enough, frankly. Yeah. Look at, but the cities that are allowed by right.
They're down zone.
I think we only have one rezoning that's been done west.
So we can get a map, working with your localities, we can get a map of where the new development is already approved and another map of where it's likely to be improved because there's something right in the pipeline. We can do that. That's fairly quick. We can also do a map of traffic counts on the major roads. We can do those two things to carry on the conversation. And I do like this idea of what are our priorities, right? And that's the point of this conversation. The conversation is we've done now workshops, we've done presentations, we've had, so what? And I keep asking myself this question, so what? What now? Well, what now is we've got to say, well, what are our priorities? And those better be priorities that come with some data and some analysis, not just like, hey, I like this thing. And then you develop a future vision. And over time, you then work with VDOT and DRPT and all these other good organizations to take those ones and look at the feasibility of those and look at the cost of those. And then we have to work out a financial plan to actually achieve the ones that are most important. But this was very helpful.
With Mr. Kelly, and then
just last comment. Just to put this in a little bit of perspective, and we did this years ago when we did our first effort to do a unconstrained plan, and we took all the comp plans of the jurisdictions. And we went, looked at them, and then we came up with what the number was that we needed to maintain the current level of traffic based on build outs on the comp plans. And we, at that time, which is years ago, which is now changed with a certain time, we were $10 billion short of the money necessary to build that level of infrastructure. That's where we were just a matter of like 10 years ago.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. All right, I will end this with just my own thoughts. I want us to all, as we think about this for 2075, and we've talked through the population projections, to remember that this area will become a metropolitan area of more than 600,000 people around 2075. 600,000. That is a not insignificant number of people, and there is very little anybody can do to stop that. And looking around, there's maybe a handful of us who will still be here by then anyway, and I'm not including myself. So what hope do the rest of us have? But the point is that we have to think on a scale that we have never thought on before. We have not thought about this region being more than 600,000 people before. That is a whole new way of thinking. So that's the first thing that I want all of us to consider, is that whatever we're thinking this region is going to look like, it won't. It will be bigger than whatever we've ever considered in the past. And with that size, that simple fact of size alone, you talk about priorities. I'd like to propose that we all think about the priority of choice, because in any region with a population of 600,000, yes, I'm saying this a lot on purpose, or more, the only way to avoid constant gridlock is to give people a choice of how they're going to get around. Not, as we, learned from the presentation about the geometry of space, the counties and the city, we're not going to expand in size. We're going to have more people in the same amount of space. And I think if we don't prioritize the concept of choice, those 600,000 people are not going to be able to do anything that they want to do, and their freedom will be greatly restricted. So as we talk through individual projects, good, bad, indifferent, I just hope that we keep that concept in our minds as we think through, again, the 600,000 people that are going to be living in just this surrounding area. All right, with that, let's move on to item 7C.
8 people?
No. You need a hearing aid already, Chris? You're definitely not making it to 2075.
Next item.
7C, the new river crossing update.
Okay, I need to preface this because remember what I said, when you get the presentation and you don't have the explanation, you can reach conclusions. This study is an investigation effectively into the feasibility. It's not ready. It's not a study that says, here it is, build it. To get there, you need to do an environmental and engineering study that will fulfill NEPA requirements. That is a specialized study. It involves a large amount of public involvement that gets documented in detail. And when you've finished proper, either an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, depending on the severity of the impacts, that has to eventually be certified by NEPA. This is not going to be certified by NEPA. I promise you that. This is looking at, is this project feasible, so that the policy committee can decide whether or not they want to continue down this road of studying this option, this idea, with some practical engineering, NEPA study, and so on. The end of the public engagement is not the 15th of May, right? It's just the public engagement on this study, which is an in-house study, meant to understand whether this is even possible and to respond to questions that were put to us by Stafford County, the city of Fredericksburg, and the policy committee. Just bear that in mind. There has to be an environmental study, standalone, done by an expert that understands NEPA and will prepare a product for NEPA, which means they will have to evaluate all these options again. But we're not at the point where we can say, here's our option, we're going to go build it. We won't be there when the study is adopted or turned down by the policy committee. We won't be there then yet. There still has to be a NEPA process. So we were asked to do this. East-West study recommended a new river crossing to reduce congestion and to systematically construct this new link, western network in Stafford County to connect through to the city and eventually Spotsylvania. Improving the roadway grid network, which has significant bottlenecks. We've talked about that tonight, and we've got it in multiple studies. The highest number of John did the research on that. We have the highest number of bottleneck miles in the state of Virginia for freight movement in this region. The Rappahannock River can be an obstacle to the developing the grid, right? A grid of roadways, which can cause congestion on the remaining roads. The reliability of I-95 is a significant factor in our region. You all talked about last week. I've got in the slides from the previous week, but every motor vehicle accident, weather incident, police action, as we saw with that hijacked vehicle and the gun battle, construction incident causes regional traffic chaos, partly because our grid is limited. In the long term, this unreliability will get worse with relief offered by the additional bridges, unless something changes. So those bridges are going to offer us relief. They're going to expand the capacity on the I-95. So it will get a little better for a while, right? I come from South Africa. In South Africa, every time we add one lane on the beltway around Johannesburg, it gives you 8 years before you're back to gridlock. So every additional lane buys you another 8 years. I don't know what the factor is here. I'm not from here historically, but there's a factor, right? After every so many years, that extra lane is used up by the new vehicles. And there's a thing called induced demand. More people come. Build it and more people will come. Promise you that. Promise you that. So we will get relief from these additional bridges and the CD lanes and the new HOV lanes, but it will go away again. This is for Stafford County, for example. This is what happens to the traffic. The average, right? And it drops to 30 miles an hour on average, almost daily, because of all the things that happen, right? This is from research across the country. This was a snapshot of Google, right? You can all do this yourself. This wasn't the week you had the problem. This was the previous week.
I have one from January 3rd.
We had a pick between last week and the week before. We had a pick between which slide to show you because every second day there was this, right? This particular week, this was Tuesday. The Wednesday was the car hijacking incident with the police, right? And then there were 2 other days that week when there was sudden downpours of rain and storms, which brought everyone to. So 4 days that week we had.
To the gun battle.
There was, excuse my South Africanism. But look at the red, right? So when a problem happens on I-95, all over this happens. You know this because you can get stuck in it. There's the slide that was talked about earlier. Roanoke has 27 bridge crossings. That's not 27 bridges. The way this was counted was a road that crosses the river. That road may have 2 bridges, or in the case of I-95, 4 bridges, but it's a crossing. 27 crossings, 76 bridge lanes, and they have a population of 230,000. Petersburg, 8 bridge crossings, 30 bridge lanes, population, and there's ours. Now, not one of these is really big, right? I-95. We're going to have 12 lanes when it is finally open northbound as well. By the way, the gentleman that was online, the numbers he quoted for traffic are not quite correct. If this is the number for the whole of the I-95, then you can't have 200,000 crossing the river from Celebrate, Virginia, into the city. It's orders of magnitude somewhere wrong. I don't know where it is, but it's not. These are actual numbers. So that just gives you an idea of context. Then we use streetlight data. Showed you these ones before, so I'm going to whip through them quickly because you've seen them. You don't need to spew about them again. What we did here, so that all the traffic that starts in Stafford that's going to cross the river south and not leave the region, stay in the region. Where do people go? Well, they're going to Central Park, they're going to Spotsylvania, Town Centre and the cinemas and Costco and all of that. They're going to the hospital, they're going to downtown Fredericksburg, they're going to the area between the I-95 and Route 1, and they're going along Route 3 to all of that area there. And the next one is your favorite, Stern, down here, right? That's where people are going. And everything in this study is about 2023 or 2022. It's not about 2050, which the East-West study did, right? This is about current or the immediate past. The northbound traffic from Spotsylvania and from the city, where is it going? Well, you can see where it's going. Just north of Warrington Road, just south of Warrington Road, where Celebrate is, out to the Walmart, out there. Those are the top 3 destinations. Also over here, and out towards Geico, etc. You can see where the traffic's going. That's where the traffic is going. That's not our wish list. That's not what we want. That's what is, based on the data of what we already have. And then there's the two together. So you see the I-95, there's people wanting to go west of the I-95 and people wanting to go east of the I-95. And here's the same picture, west of the I-95 and east of the I-95. The difference between the two sides of the I-95 is you've got multiple bridges east of the I-95. The next bridge west of the I-95, Becky tells me, is about 40 miles. Kelly's Ford. It's 40 miles, right? Kelly's Ford. Yeah, you've got east, you've got Route 1, you've got the new Chatham Bridge, got the Route 3 bridge, and then eventually another one further out, right? Yeah, it's 40 miles west. Those are the blocks which we picked out. You've had this presentation in your packet and you've seen it before. These are the places that people are wanting to go through. To the ones, and red is southbound, blue is northbound. The ones in red are the ones that we think that are crossing west of I-95 would serve. The only unusual one is the hospital, but we think that people would use it to get to the hospital, even though it's not directly west of the I-95. Then we looked at options. Now, there's no magic about options. We can all get a crayon and draw a line on the map, right? But we picked some to study the impacts, because the impact is what matters, not exactly where the roadway is. And we numbered them. Initially, we did not have option 1 as part of the study. Staff of the city asked us to add that to the modeling to tell them what the impact would be of adding a slip lane from the I-95 into Central Park. So we did the modeling for that option 1, but actually options 2 to 5 were the ones that we initially had looked into as part of the study. And in each one of these, you can make multiple permutations of it, right? You can decide to build this and not build that portion and carry up Greenbank Road, for example. There's always multiple permutations of each option. We're really trying to study what the general impact is of each of these options. So there's option 1. Option 2, this is from on Shelton Road, across the river at the quarry. A new road that would be constructed through here would join the very top of Celebrate, and then build an additional connection up onto Commerce Drive so that you can get to Plantation and Enoch and eventually through Stafford County. This one, very crooked. It tries to avoid some of the environmental stuff over here, get up to Greenbank, go up Greenbank, and then across to Commerce Drive. But the rest of Greenbank still exists, Celebrate still exists. This option is the one that was talked about, right? This discussion was started in some ways by the East-West study where somebody drew a line like this on a map. So we said, well, what are the impacts of that? And we studied the impacts of that so that we know.
When Joe Brito did that.
Maybe Joe Brito's idea started this discussion. So we modeled that option. Then option 5 is the whole hog, right? It's the longest portions of roadway you'd have to build to try to get through. And the reason why we apart from getting through to 17, we're trying to look at that option is because it's a way to cross 17 to get to Plantation, to get to Enon, to get to Centerport Parkway, etc. Environmental considerations. So you can see every one of these red patches is an easement or some sort of environmentally sensitive area that we already know about. We've got a large concentration of those in our study area. We've looked at easements for the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, the Nature Conservancy, City of Fredericksburg has issued some, and the Virginia Outdoor Foundation. That's what it looks like. Now, the ones on the right in this photograph are easements that have been, the correct word in the US, extended, proffered, given out,
Dedicated.
whatever the right verb is, by silver companies, right? To those various entities, the Virginia Outdoor Foundation, the Northern Virginia Transportation. Difficult to get changed, but they can be changed. The process is long, it costs money, you have to usually offer a land swap, you often have to get the permission of the person who gave out the easement in the first place. Very difficult to do. This gap, however, here, 216 feet wide, may be wide enough to put a roadway through. And according to the documents attached to that easement, it can be moved, that gap, according to the easement conditions. This side are easements given first to the city and then by the city to the Virginia Outdoor Foundation, etc. These are co-held because they, that these are part of one easement really, and the easement documents the city extended to the various parties allow for a crossing to be built, a bridge to be built in the future. It doesn't preclude such a thing from happening. These make no such mention, right? We think that possibly this was left originally for the proposed gondola that was going to be built across the river that never happened, right? So that's how we think we got historically to this point. Under certain conditions, we could cross these. You would need money and land swaps and lots of permissions from lots of people to cross these. Can be done. It's been done before. It's more complicated, and you have to consider the impact on these areas that you would have. Some of the city staff that we spoke to are not keen to lose this piece of river frontage, which is pristine, undeveloped, and where this easement occurs, because it is still, I think one staff member said it's the last piece of what's the word? I want to say unmolested, but
Unsullied.
Unsullied river frontage in the city.
It's the only location where you cannot see a road.
Yes. You can over here, you hear the I-95, but you can't see it. All right. So, development, land use, right? All the gray is currently developed. The brown, apart from where the easements occur, is developable land. And in many cases, there is already a project either already approved or applied for that's working through the system, or have been publicly stated by the landowner they're going to develop it with X number of units. Potentially, there are thousands more units coming in some of these brown areas that currently exist here. And we've heard through the grapevine that the silver company is also talking about a new residential development here. I think the Celebrate people know more about that than we do, but that's what's going on. The good and the bad is, the good part of that is that the development was planned and is being executed before we bothered with any river crossing. So the river crossing is not going to spur massive urban sprawl. We've got copies of the plans already of most of these developments. So that's not,
want it or not.
whether well, it's not up to us to approve them. You all approve them, actually. Anyway.
All right.
So, what is the impact of each of these river crossings? This is average annual daily trip counts, right? So this is the baseline, and in each case, you must look at the baseline because this is the number of trips that happens now. If we do nothing, this is what's currently happening, not in the future, now. This is what's happening. Then the model predicts what would happen if you built each of these options, right? And you might think it's strange, we're building more roadway, but the trips reduce. The reason for that is that it counts trip segments. So if you have a more direct route, you travel on fewer segments. So your number of hours in the car, your number of miles traveled is less. And so in the region, number of trips reduces if you make a more direct route. That's why that basically happens. I'm oversimplifying, I guess, but to try to understand why that's happening. And each of these is option 1, the slip lane, option 2, the Eastern Bridge, option 3, the central one, the Long Bridge, that's the one that connects directly to the bottom of Celebrate Parkway. And that is the western one, which is the very long, lots of roadway that has to be built. You can see each one of them, except maybe for the slip lane, reduces the amount of trips and the length of the trip that people are going to take. This one, it does redirect about 10,000 trips, but it's the lowest impact. If you take out the impacts on the I-95, the impact is more severe, right? So it has a smaller impact on I-95 than it's having on the local roads if you build this bridge. So you're taking more local traffic than you're taking, stop using the I-95, come and drive on our roadway. This is not our work. This is from the East-West study. It's a cut and paste, right? Because this shows you 2050, not today. The graphs we've shown you up till now and the stuff we're going to show you after this is about today, if we built the bridge today. This is what happens in the future if we build the bridge. And you can see the impacts over time become bigger than the impacts we would see if we built the bridge today. Because as time goes on, the impact on the regional congestion is greater over time. As the total volume of traffic increases, so therefore the percentage share, etc. You've seen that in the East-West study already. It's not news. John.
So when we initially did a lot of our volume capacity analysis, I mean, you start off by just looking at this VC analysis for the entire day. Just let's say, okay, what's the total amount of it? And a lot of the data and discussions that's going to follow on option 1, the slip lane, you see very, very, very almost insignificant amounts of increase in overall congestion. It removes it kind of off that interstate interchange and just kind of shifts it like 1 or 2 roads over, and there is like a small amount of induced traffic going on. So it's a small increase. The whole day options, option 3, the Central Ridge, and option 5 showed the biggest kind of benefit to the volume to capacity ratio over time. However, when we start splitting this up by time of day and when trips are going to be happening, you start seeing a shift in the pattern. So when we look at peak commuting costs, option 2 actually starts off with the biggest reduction to congestion within our region, and some of the other options actually kind of trail off. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see what's happening here is that we broke it up. AM for the morning commute, midday, which are called the midday shoppers, kind of living life in the middle of the day, the PM, and overnight. option 3 and option 5 are generating a lot of congestion reduction after 6 p.m. So we're seeing that they're kind of pulling traffic in a different way during hours where probably you don't need to be pulling a lot of traffic. What we're seeing is that actually option 2 is actually pulling slightly more traffic during the morning commute and evening commute on local traffic in particular. But in the midday, it's actually not doing a whole lot. And we actually believe that there's a fair amount of reduced demand kind of going on behind the scenes that's actually making that connection that folks are able to actually get to the shopping locations. So there's other options that are kind of pulling it at 5 times. So if you want to continue, I'll just kind of lead into what what the model considers a truck. And this is where I can keep that over vehicles. But for the model, they really consider anything that's a medium duty pickup truck a truck. So it's everything from your plumbers, vans, to school buses, red buses. It's not all 18-wheelers and dump trucks. It could be a cherry picker or a city repair vehicle for stormwater management. So when the model says truck, it's actually kind of taking a very broad kind of definition that a lot of folks don't necessarily think when they think truck. So when we start looking at the truck volumes, you can see kind of a couple of options going on. For the option 1, doesn't really do anything. It's just a minor increase. Option 5, you start seeing a lot more truck volume being redistributed. You see that it's pulling a lot of trucks, actually helping 95 out the most, and a fair amount on local roads. On options 2 and 3,
let me stop you. This option 5 pulls a significant amount of traffic off the I-95 onto option 5, truck traffic. It's pulling truck traffic off of the I-95, right?
And off 17.
Yes. And you'll see these pull less traffic off of the I-95. In fact, this one model predicts will push truck traffic onto the I-95 and off the local. But it's a model. Models are not 100% perfect. They give you an approximate idea of what the future could look like. And here you can see Gordon Road will get lots more trucks. Ball Hill Avenue will get lots more trucks, etc. Truslow Road. Now, this volume to capacity ratio is another way of saying congestion. How much space have you got, and how many vehicles you're going to put on it gives you how much congestion you're going to have. So volume to capacity ratio is congestion. This is about congestion. So what will happen with these various options? Blue tells you that there's a significant reduction in congestion. Red tells you it's going the other way. There's an increase in congestion on particular roads. And we really modeled a whole lot of roads model to see what the impacts would be, right? So Hospital Drive would be a big winner with most of these options, less traffic. Mary Washington, is it called Mary Washington Drive?
Boulevard Hospital. You're seeing a lot of traffic that's going to turn Route 1 in Central Park right now through those roads. That's what you're seeing traffic being pulled off.
Now we get into some of the specific details. So this is option 1. Remember, it's the slip lane. The dots indicate where we would build a new road. So if you put that slip lane, it takes blue, significant traffic off of the off-ramp at Route 3, right? And a little bit here into the city. It slightly increases the traffic on this portion of Caldy Silver. That's what that off-ramp would do in practice. In each of these cases, the map on the right shows you the volume, and this shows you congestion, right? So this is just volume, and how thick the line is tell you what the volume would be. So this is the end result. We build this slip lane, that's what the volume would be. It's about 10,000 vehicle trips. 2. This is option 2. You can see here around the hospital, it reduces the traffic. On Paul Silver, it reduces the traffic. On the on-ramp, it reduces the traffic. On 17, it reduces the traffic significantly. This is Truslow Road, it reduces the traffic, right? If you put this here, that portion of Celebrate in the north will see more traffic. And Plantation will see more traffic if you connect through the dots there. There'll be a little more traffic here, and Bragg Road, also a small amount of additional traffic. That's kind of the overall picture. You can see the impacts on the roadways there. If you don't see any dark red, it's or brown.
This is volumes. This is retargeting. It increases or decreases
Yeah.
vehicles.
So all the blues show you reduction in the volume, number of cars or trucks or whatever vehicles. And significant numbers of blues here where you're seeing the reduction in the actual number of vehicles on the road. And this is the AM traffic in the peak, lunchtime traffic, evening peak traffic, and this is the overnight traffic. What happens with that particular option. And it's the same for each of the ones that we're going to go through. And you can see the volumes. If you build this road, that's a rough kind of line drawing of what the volume would look like on that road compared to other roads. Option 3, the dotted line is where we would build the new roads. You can see the increase on traffic on Greenbank, on Celebrate, on the roads in the city as well. Again, the red ones are the ones to worry about because that's actual counts, numbers of vehicles that will be increased on those roads. And you can see Banksford, Greenbank Road, Bragg Road, that's where all the increased traffic will be, and the reduced traffic where all the balloons are. Again, around the hospital, Truslow, Sanford Road, Warrington Road, etc. Here's option 4. Again, here's the new roadway bridge. That's the one that we were talking about just a moment ago. You can see again, Greenbank Road, because it's connected, there would be an increase, Banksford, etc. You can see the actual numbers there. Here's just an indication of the congestion ratio changes. This dark brown color doesn't mean completely congested. It shows increase or decrease. It doesn't show final result, right? So this is not the final amount of congestion, and I worried about these. I tried to get John and Connor to not use these maps because they give the wrong impression. This is not the end result of congestion. This is whether it goes up or down. Blue means it goes down, red means brown means it goes up, but it doesn't give you an indication of the amount that it goes up. That you have to look at the table there to see the amount that it will go up. There's option 5. Again, you can see this one impacts River Road, but significantly. And again, Greenbank Road. So people have asked about Route 3, and Route 3 is damn difficult, if you excuse my language, to model and to give you an answer to. And there's a very good reason for that. Each segment of Route 3 behaves differently because of the traffic lights, because of the number of roads that connect with it or don't connect with it. So you've got to look at each segment. So instead of just fudging it and giving you an overall number, we dug into the details. From the I-95 up to Bragg Road, you can see below the line indicates a reduction in traffic. So you get significant reduced traffic on Route 3 between I-95 and Bragg Road, except for the slip lane, right? It reduces the traffic. From Bragg Road to Salem Church Road, there is an increase. It's not quite as big as the big reduction you get on the first section, but there is an increase on traffic between those 2 points. And then people go down Salem Church Road and it tapers off to eventually nothing. So that's what actually happens. We could have fudged it and tried to, no, it's by segment. There's different things going on in different segments and you needed to see those segments because that's literally what happened. Why is that happening? So I tried to answer that for you. It's Spotsylvania pent-up demand that we anticipate is going on here. People are taking this route up Salem Road, Bank Road, Bragg Road, and then across the river, or in the other direction, coming back across to get back to Spotsylvania. But that's why that section of Route 3 gets a little bit more congested. It's because you've got to try to get from Spotsylvania to the bridge. So there's got to be a pathway to get to the bridge, and you need that link.
Yeah.
If there'd been a road here, you wouldn't have needed that link. But because there's no road here, that link has got to carry a bit extra traffic to be able to get you from Spotsylvania to the bridge. That's why it happens. There may be ways we can offset that. There is this project currently on the books, which is going to remove the bump outs on Route 3, which will assist a little bit to deal with that traffic. Also, VDOT, and this is brand new. We don't yet know what the outcomes are. There's a new study, pipeline studies, looking at Salem Church Road and also at Route 3 to see what accommodations and projects can be produced to deal with congestion on those two roads. Whether or not we build this bridge, those projects are projects that are currently on the go. And also, of course, if you do the other project that is on that list, which is the Harrison Road interchange, then this significantly reduces on Bank Road. There is a possibility finally in future that you could punch through, don't scream at me, where the burger joint is. What's it?
Burger King.
Burger King. The Burger King is. You might be able to initially put just 2 lanes through without breaking down the burger joint. I'm sure Spotsylvania will be happy with that. And then in time, getting everybody used to the idea you could move that building and put in another 2 lanes, maybe. Don't scream yet. That could assist also getting people into Spotsylvania town center that want to follow this route. The reason that's important, I'll show you in a moment. So what are the volumes? Now John and myself and Connor and the rest of the staff of FAMPO didn't make up these numbers. This comes out of the travel demand model for the FAMPO region that is created and administered by VDOT. So VDOT ran the model and sent us the numbers. We didn't cook them up here, right? So anybody wants to contest the numbers, fighting with the travel demand model that exists, not fighting with us. These are the actual numbers. So what is likely to happen? Option 1 will pull 10,000 trips off of the highway straight into Central Park. Option 2 will carry maybe 52,000 trips. And this is a daily trip count. Yes. 53,000, 55,000, 58,000. That's out of the model. What of those are trucks? There you can see this one, which we told you earlier, is pulling a lot of trucks off of the I-95. We did this so that you can compare. What does 52,000 vehicles look like? Well, the Falmouth Bridge on US 1 carries 65,000. The Route 3 bridge carries 48,000. The I-95, this is not with the new bridges open. Model's predicting that. This is predicting with the new bridges. So you're going to have 100,000 on the I-95. And of those will be truck.
How many is that?
Sir, I'm sorry, this is not a football, but thank you.
All right, economic development. Economic development, who was it who called economics the dismal science? One of those philosophers in years gone by. I used to have a job in Parliament in South Africa where I had to deal with labor law. My job was to be the shadow labor minister. And when you get into what the impact is of labor laws on economics, all depends who you talk to. In the morning, someone tells you it's going to crash the economy. In the afternoon, it tells you it's going to fix the economy, right? I don't claim to be an economics expert, but there are some things that generally happen with new projects. This is some economic growth during construction and opening of the new project based on the people who are going to work here while the project is built. That doesn't last. It goes on between 2 and 8 years. Foot traffic to businesses, new businesses that can be sustained because of the foot traffic, new land opening up for development. That depends where you put the roads and the bridge, right? Might help, might not. The consensus is that it would increase economic activity and growth for the region and tax revenue as well as quality of life benefits, reducing the number of hours you spend in your car. It will have a greater impact on Central Park and Southern Stafford and a lower impact on Spotsylvania. There is even the possibility it may draw some foot traffic from Spotsylvania to Central Park or to Southern Stafford. It's possible. That's difficult to assess in this level of study. And as I said, my own personal view of economics is depends who you talk to. You can get economists who will tell you all of the answers. I find it hard to know who's correct. A comment from Spotsylvania's Economic Development Department. If the new route included the old Harrison Road connector, which is something before my time, I don't know a lot about it, then the potential for greater economic impact for the region could be justified and congestion on Route 1 and Route 3 could be reduced. I don't know a lot about that project. This we found significant. I asked Connor to go and tell me whether there's a seasonal difference in the traffic coming to Spotsylvania Town Centre or Central Park. And there is. This is a very surprising number. It's a relative index, right? It's not a count of all the cars. It's a relative index. The traffic on the weekend going to Spotsylvania Town Centre seems to reduce in the summer. And the theory that we've been able to come up with is because of all the holiday traffic on the I-95, it makes it harder to get from Stafford to Spotsylvania Town Centre on the weekend. Because of all the people going to the beach and coming back from the beach on Sunday afternoon, it ruins business in Spotsylvania Town Centre because of that. So that may be alleviated with the river crossing in Spotsylvania. The city does see a similar pattern, but not quite as significant. Make of that what you will. Costs. Now, again, before everybody screams, this is a high-level planning cost estimate done by a specific tool. We fed the numbers in and got a result out. It's not accurate. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it can't be accurate. You can't get a cost estimate until you've got a bill of quantities. You can't get a bill of quantities until you've got a specific road alignment and all of the engineering that goes along with it. How do you know if there's got to be water attenuation? To what degree there's got to be water attenuation? You can't predict all of the costs of buying the real estate. So this is a very high-level approximation of a cost estimate. Yeah, so that just gives you a high-level cost estimate. This item here is an additional item which is suggested for that particular option, for the option 2, because where you cross Sanford Road, those of you who live there will know that Celebrate Virginia doesn't cross Sanford Road at grade. There's a bridge over, right? VDOT has said to us when we were doing these modeling exercises that to connect to 17 with a volume of traffic like this, too close to the I-95 interchange with 17, you're going to mess up the traffic flow of the on-ramps and the off-ramps of the I-95 itself. So please don't build a road too close to the on-ramps and off-ramps of the I-95. So in order to do that, you've got to cross over Sanford and to get further away from the I-95. If you don't do that, some of the traffic will just get off of the new road, get onto Sanford Road, and try to connect with Route 17 very close to the I-95. Don't have to build that, but it would certainly help with the off-ramps and on-ramps on I-95 on US 17. That's what that's all about. Again, until you've done a NEPA study and an engineering study, you can't say whether or not that's necessary. These are the actual costs of the two I-95 bridges, just for comparison. Potential funding we were asked to look at. This is just very high level. By the way, this isn't the report. Spent hours of our lives typing the actual report. Haven't typed the conclusion yet. Wanted to hear what you all screamed before I typed the conclusion. But there is a full report. This is just a summary done so that next month you don't come there and have to absorb everything in one meeting. It's too much to absorb in one meeting. But these grants typically give large amounts of money for large projects. As an example of a project that got an award this year, $250 million for a particular project. The state has smart scale, there are federal set aside sometimes, local bonds and all this. This stuff here comes about because there has to be a local match when you build a big project. Very seldom will the federal government give a grant for 100% of the cost of building a new big piece of infrastructure. There is always some match. It can be state match or local match that has to be put in. And that would have to be sought elsewhere, right? Either from the state or from local. This is not every form of funding that's available. That's just high level, some that you need to know about. Next steps. This is, if we want to proceed, we have to do these things internally. That consultant then has to do a NEPA level analysis. First step is to do what is called an environmental assessment, which may determine that a full environmental impact study is required. It's likely that the first phase will tell you whether you need a full environmental impact statement. You then, once that is done, which includes multiple public meetings where you record everybody's input, you then have to start funding applications. Then you have to go back to NEPA to say, okay, we've got money, give us a certification to say we can proceed. Then they have to do certification. Only then can you get into the final engineering design, buying land and that sort of thing. It's not a long way to go if you want to build a project like this. This is not something we're going to build next year. We've got to go through all of this. And I've made this sound one bullet point. There's a whole, VDOT keeps reminding me, there's a whole lot more in this than just one bullet point. This is multiple stages of a NEPA analysis, because you have to show, and this is why we can't pick a route tonight, you have to show that the least impactful option is the one they're going to build. So it's not about my opinion or your opinion, it's about assessment, the environmental impact, effects on people, and that requires a proper study. Chairman, we did this tonight so that in the next meeting, when maybe 200 people will pitch up, you've at least got first taste of it. We'll give you a full report. This is just a summary to give you the basic responses we've got from the travel demand model, that we've got from streetlight data, that we've got from talking to the economic development departments of the different jurisdictions, and all the other work.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
Quick question. You mentioned that Spotsylvania staff, and Chris, you'd know more about this, I know. Are you guys talking about the Harrison Road extension again, or no?
I would love to. I'd put that thing in tomorrow, but there's a person in the way. So,
Let's take
I mean, I don't know. Is it seriously being discussed?
not by me. No,
No, it's not. Okay, I was curious because that's a whole different
Committee.
kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Throw that into the mix.
I can't comment on that. I don't know.
That's basically taking your Burger King out, taking a road down behind the mall, town center, and going all the way to Harrison Road and using it as a safety valve to get the residential traffic off of Route 3.
Okay, I understand. The only thing that I was suggesting here is that first little section from the Burger King into the town center, right?
Well, no, you just mentioned that and that somebody said something. I was just wondering how serious that is.
Yeah, that was comments we received from the Economic Development Department of Pennsylvania County.
Are there any other comments or questions? Presentation? All right. Thank you very much.
May we'll present this at a bigger venue, the VDOT. Thank you very much, Marcy and the VDOT staff. We'll come to your venue. Promise we won't break anything. We'll give it back to you when we're done. We will do this and provide the actual.
Remember, it cost Jerry Logan his job.
That's it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 7D, resolution 2318. We're directing a public comment period.
For this item, Chairman, we're not asking for you to endorse or disagree or change anything. We're just asking for the public comment period. Then there's a month for you all and your staff in your jurisdictions to give us input. We've already received some input from one jurisdiction. They want this changed or that changed. So that's all we're looking for, is to just start a public comment period. Please do give us in the next month your own comments.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any discussion?
So this is only for public comment?
Only for public comment.
Okay.
There's no decision. You will make a decision after you've seen the final presentation on the river crossing study next month. There's a whole month, and please do send your.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Moving on to correspondence.
There's one item which I do need to point out to you. Folks, if you can just listen, there is the CTB. The spring CTB public engagement exercises, it goes by different names, are happening. And please scroll down to the date and time. The meeting that affects our region is May the 8th at 4 p.m. at the Germana Community College. We typically every year send 1 or 2 or 3 people from FAMPO to represent us, to attend and to speak at the meeting in favor or against the proposals that are in the 6-year plan. I just suggest that you tonight ask 1 or 2 folks to attend the meeting and to make their comments. Last year, I went, Meg Bomke went, Matt Kelly went, and some of the jurisdictions, transportation staff went. I know Paul went. So I just think you don't pass over this item. It's your one chance to talk about the 6-year plan and any projects. The secretary is usually there, Secretary of Transportation is usually there, all the VDOT staff are there, the head of DRPT is usually there, the head of VDOT is usually there, and so you can have some input also for the public. It's a public meeting. The public can also go along and comment on projects.
Thank you. Is there anybody here who would like to volunteer to be present at that meeting?
I'll be in Germany.
Yeah, I know you're
I'll
out.
go.
Spawn, you'll be
Let me-
there.
Let me make sure, see what day it is.
Yeah, it's Monday, May 8th.
Monday.
It's a Monday?
It's a
Yes.
Monday.
What time?
4 p.m.
I can probably go. I think I can go.
If you just email me or the chairperson this week, if you're going to go, we'd like to have at least 2 people there just to talk to the projects. It's your one chance to talk to the powers that be about the projects.
And in this case, since it's already a public meeting, more than 2 of us can be there.
You can all go. I just want to make sure we don't have 0 people go.
Yes. No. Okay, great. All right. All right. Thank you. Any other correspondence?
Totally. I think that's all. Yep. The chair.
All right. Staff and agency reports. I know item 9A, our next meeting and the location. It's going to be a little bigger. And thank you
Your sleeping bag.
for the space. Any further board member comments? Item 10. All right. Well, seeing none, then we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all your time.
Might be able to get Canada.
And she too.
Canada. So.
Yeah.